The rain in New York City that evening was the kind that soaks through your coat before you even realize it has started. It came down in thick silver sheets, turning the sidewalks into mirrors and sending everyone rushing for doorways and awnings. Taxis disappeared the moment you needed them. Umbrellas turned inside out. The whole city seemed to fold inward on itself, becoming small and wet and intimate in the way that only a rainstorm can make a city of 8 million people feel. Maya Chun had been walking for 6 blocks in that rain. She was 27 years old. A junior graphic designer at a mid-size advertising firm in Midtown Manhattan. And she was soaked from her dark hair down to her white sneakers, which were no longer white but a sad, defeated gray. She was holding her portfolio case above her head as if it could serve as an umbrella, which it absolutely could not, because portfolio cases are flat and rain falls at angles when the wind is involved. And the wind that evening was very much involved. She was also late, not fashionably late. Not 5 minutes late. She was 22 minutes late to her own birthday dinner, which she had planned herself. Which was the most embarrassing kind of late it had started with her boss keeping her past 6 o'clock to make final revisions on a campaign that, in Maya's honest opinion, did not need final revisions. It had continued with her running to her apartment on West 44th Street, changing out of her work clothes and into the nicest thing she owned, which was a deep green wrap dress that she had bought on sale 8 months ago and worn exactly once. It had concluded with her stepping outside and immediately discovering that the universe had decided her birthday was a good occasion for a biblical downpour at the restaurant was called Aurelie. Maya had picked it because her friend Jasmine had mentioned it once, saying it was the kind of place where the food made you close your eyes and the atmosphere made you want to stay forever. Maya had looked it up online and had been slightly alarmed by the prices, but had decided that she turned 27 only once, and that she deserved a nice dinner with her 3 closest friends. She had made the reservation 2 weeks in advance. She had confirmed it the day before. She had written the address on a sticky note that she had then lost, but she had screenshot the confirmation email, so she had the address ready on her phone, which was now getting wet despite her best efforts. She pushed through the front door of Aurelie at 7:22 in the evening, tripping onto the elegant entryway tile, and found herself standing in the warmest, most beautiful restaurant she had ever seen. The interior was all warm amber light and dark wood and white tablecloths. There were candles on every table, real ones, not the fake flickering LED kind, and the flames made everything glow gold. The ceiling was high and arched, with exposed brick on 2 walls and large abstract oil paintings on the others. There was quiet music playing, something French and piano heavy, and the smell of the place was extraordinary garlic and butter and something floral, maybe lavender, threading through everything. Maya stood in the doorway dripping and feeling deeply, profoundly underdressed. Every single person in the restaurant looked like they belonged on the cover of a magazine. The women wore things that had been tailored to their bodies. The men wore watches that cost more than Maya's monthly rent. Even the waitstaff moved with a kind of confident grace that made Maya aware of the puddle forming around her sneakers. "Good evening." A host appeared before her, a tall young man in a black suit, his expression perfectly pleasant in that professional way that meant he had been trained to look pleasant in all situations, including the arrival of soaking wet women in wrap dresses and destroyed sneakers. "Do you have a reservation?" "Yes," Maya said, pushing her wet hair back from her face. "Chun, party of 4. "I'm so sorry I'm late." The host was looking at his screen. He was looking at his screen for slightly longer than felt comfortable. "Chun," he said again. "Maya Chun, I confirmed yesterday." "I see a reservation for Chun," he said carefully. "But I'm afraid the rest of your party arrived and after waiting they were seated. And I'm very sorry to tell you that your table has since been given to another party, as per our policy after 30 minutes. Maya stared at him. "My friends are here?" They were. They waited until 7:15. "I believe they may have left." Maya pulled out her phone. There were 3 texts from Jasmine, the last one reading, "Maya, where are you? We waited as long as we could. Priya has that thing at 8. We're so sorry. Happy birthday. We'll make it up to you. Call me." Maya looked at the text. She looked at the beautiful restaurant. She looked down at her wet sneakers. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay, can I at least, is there any table available?" "I'll eat alone." "It's fine. It's my birthday." She did not mean for that last sentence to come out the way it did. She did not mean to sound like a small sad person saying it's my birthday to a restaurant host while standing in a puddle. But sometimes the truth of a thing comes out. Before you have time to dress it up, the host's perfectly maintained expression softened by about 2 degrees. "Let me check," he said. "One moment." He went to check. Maya moved to the side of the entryway out of the direct path of other arriving guests. She wrung out the edge of her dress. She thought about the $60 portion of her paycheck she had mentally allocated to tonight and wondered if she could pivot and order just an appetizer and sit with it for a long time. "Miss Chun?" She looked up. The host was back, but he was not alone. Standing beside him was a woman. The woman was, without any exaggeration, one of the most striking people Maya had ever seen in person. She was tall, perhaps 5'10", with the kind of posture that suggested she had never once in her life slouched against anything. She had dark brown hair cut into a sleek, gel-length bob that somehow looked perfect in a way that Maya, who had been fighting with her own hair for 27 years, found personally offensive. She was wearing a charcoal gray blazer over a silk blouse the color of champagne, with dark trousers and shoes that were simple and clearly expensive in the way that very expensive things pretend to be simple. She was looking at Maya with eyes that were a very unusual shade, not quite brown, not quite green, something warm and complicated in between, and her expression was unreadable in the way that very composed people's expressions tend to be. "This is Ms. Reeves," the host said. "She has a table for 2 and her guest was unable to make it this evening. She heard your situation and has offered to share her table. If you're comfortable with that." Maya looked at the woman. The woman, Miss Reeves, looked at Maya with that same composed, unreadable expression. "It's a large table," Miss Reeves said. Her voice was low and unhurried, with the faintest trace of a Boston accent underneath the polished exterior. "And it seems like a waste for both of us to eat alone on a rainy evening." Maya was aware that she was soaking wet and this woman was immaculate. She was aware that she was a junior graphic designer and this woman had the quiet, settled energy of someone who had never had to worry about whether she could afford an appetizer. She was aware that this was slightly unusual. Sharing a table with a stranger, she was also 27 years old and alone, on her birthday in the most beautiful restaurant she had ever been in. And the alternative was going home to her apartment and eating leftover pad thai in her wet dress. "That's very kind of you," Maya said. "Thank you. I'm Maya." The woman looked at her for one more moment, something shifting very slightly in those unusual eyes. "I'm Sloane," she said. The table was in a corner near one of the large abstract paintings, set slightly apart from the other tables in the way that restaurants set certain tables apart for their best guests. It had 2 candles instead of 1, and the chairs were upholstered in dark green velvet that matched, somewhat to Maya's embarrassed delight, her slightly damp wrap dress. A waiter brought Maya a warm towel for her face and hands without being asked. Another appeared with a glass of sparkling water. Maya, who had been in restaurants where the warmth of the towel was not a feature that existed, decided that this was already the best restaurant experience of her life, regardless of how the rest of the evening went. Sloane sat across from her, unhurried, and picked up her menu in a way that suggested she'd been here before. Many times. "Happy birthday," Sloane said, not looking up from the menu. Maya froze slightly. "The host told you?" "You told the host." "I was nearby." A pause. 27? "Yes, how did you said you only turned 27 once." To the host. Sloane glanced up, and there was the faintest suggestion of something warm in her expression. "I wasn't eavesdropping." "You weren't particularly quiet." "I was flustered," Maya said, with as much dignity as she could muster. "You were soaking wet and abandoned on your birthday." Flustered seems like an appropriate response. Maya laughed despite herself. It was a real laugh, slightly surprised, the kind that escapes before you decide to let it out. "They didn't abandon me. I was 22 minutes late, because of your boss. You really were nearby. The entryway's small." Sloane set down her menu and looked at Maya directly for the first time since they had sat down. That look had weight to it. Not the uncomfortable weight of being evaluated, but something else, something more careful and attentive. "What do you do?" "Graphic designer, advertising, you?" A brief pause. I run a company. Maya waited for more. More did not come. She had the impression that Sloane was someone who gave information and careful, considered portions, not out of secrecy exactly, but out of a long habit of precision. What kind of company? Maya asked. Real estate development and investment. Commercial properties mostly. Some residential. Another pause, and then something that might have been the beginning of a smile. It's less interesting than it sounds. I don't think it sounds that interesting, honestly, Maya said, and then immediately worried that was rude. But Sloane's expression did something unexpected. It opened slightly, like a window being pushed up an inch to let in air. It's not, she agreed. It's mostly numbers and arguments about zoning. The waiter came. Sloane ordered without looking at the menu again, the duck confit and a glass of something red that the waiter confirmed with a small nod of approval. Maya looked at the menu and tried to calculate which combination of dishes would be both the best culinary experience she could justify and also not require her to eat ramen for the next 3 weeks. Order what you want, Sloane said quietly without looking up. Please. It's your birthday. Maya looked at her. I'm not trying to be condescending, Sloane added, still not looking up. I'm trying to say that I'd like to buy you dinner. If that's all right, you don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. Now Sloane did look up, and there was that careful, direct look again. I want to. Your friends left and you're wet and it's your birthday. Let me buy you dinner. Something about the straightforwardness of it, the lack of performance in the offer, made Maya relax in a way she hadn't since she'd stepped out of her apartment 2 hours ago. Okay, she said. Thank you. She ordered the lamb and a glass of the same red wine, because Sloane had ordered it and Maya trusted that her taste in wine was probably good. The wine, when it came, was extraordinary. It tasted like the color of autumn if autumn were a flavor. Maya said this out loud without thinking and then wondered again if she sounded strange, but Sloane tilted her head slightly, as if turning the description over in her mind. That's actually a very good description, Sloane said. The sommelier here would probably like that. Is the sommelier a friend of yours? I eat her fairly often. How often is fairly often? Sloane considered this. Once or twice a week, usually. Maya looked around the restaurant at the people in their tailored clothing and expensive watches and thought about what it would mean to eat at a place like this once or twice a week. This place is not cheap. No, Sloane agreed, with a simplicity that confirmed, without elaboration, that the price was not a consideration for her. Maya had grown up in Queens, in a small apartment above her parents' dry cleaning business, where dinner had met whatever her mother had found on sale and birthday. Celebrations had met homemade cake and $5 from her grandmother in a card. She was not uncomfortable with people who had money. New York City had too many of them for discomfort to be sustainable, but she was aware, in this moment, of a certain distance between her world and the world of this composed private woman sitting across from her with her perfect haircut and her easy familiarity with a restaurant that cost $120 a head. Does that make you uncomfortable? Sloane asked. A little, Maya said, because she had already established that she was not good at not saying true things. Sloane nodded, without apparent offense. That's fair. I grew up without money. I know what that distance feels like from the other side. Maya looked at her. Really? Really? A pause. It was a long time ago, but I remember it. There was something in the way she said that not self-congratulatory. Not the kind of I was poor once story that people with money sometimes told to make themselves relatable, but something quiet and real and slightly costly. As if the memory still had edges. Maya found herself wanting to know more. She found herself wanting to know quite a lot more, actually, which was surprising because Maya did not usually feel immediately curious about strangers. She was, by nature, a slow warmer. She had friends she had known for years before she felt like she truly knew them, but there was something about Sloane Reeves that made Maya feel like knowing her would be worth the effort. They were supposed to be two strangers sharing a table out of logistical necessity. They were not supposed to talk for 4 hours, but the food came and the wine was poured, and Sloane asked Maya what she was working on currently, which was an unusual question because most people asked Maya what kind of design she did and then looked mildly glazed when she tried to explain the difference between brand identity work and campaign work. Sloane did not look glazed. She asked follow-up questions. She wanted to know what Maya thought made a good visual identity, what the difference was between design that was clever and design that was actually good. Whether Maya thought the best advertising was honest or just effective, Maya had opinions about all of these things. Strong ones. She had been holding them in for years in professional contexts because junior employees did not typically lead impassioned debates about the philosophy of visual communication during client meetings. But here, with a glass of extraordinary wine and a plate of lamb that was making her think about the concept of perfection in food, with a woman who was asking genuine questions and listening to the answers with her full attention here, Maya found her opinions coming out one after another, building on each other. Her hands moving the way they did when she was genuinely engaged. Sloane listened. She did not interrupt. She did not check her phone. She did not do the thing where people nod at intervals in a way that suggests they are waiting for their turn to speak rather than actually hearing you. She listened the way that very few people knew how to listen, with her whole self turned toward you. Her unusual eyes steady and attentive, and then she would respond not with validation exactly, but with a counterpoint or a question that pushed the idea further, or an observation from her own field that mapped onto what Maya was saying in a way that was unexpected and interesting. Maya asked her about the company, about real estate development specifically, which she had privately thought sounded quite dry. But Sloane talked about it in a way that made it less dry, the way that a building affected the neighborhood around it, the responsibility that came with deciding what got built where, the way that architectural choices carried cultural weight that most developers didn't think about enough. Do you think about it enough? Maya asked. Sloane paused, as if actually considering the question rather than deflecting it. I try to. I probably don't always succeed. Another pause. My last project in Brooklyn, a mixed-use building in Bushwick, I fought with my partners for 8 months over the design. They wanted something that would maximize profit per square foot. I wanted something that fit the neighborhood aesthetically and had genuine community space built in. We compromised. Who won more of the compromise? A small smile. They got more square footage. I got the architect I wanted and the community room on the ground floor. That sounds like you won. The small smile became slightly larger. I thought so too. The food disappeared. More wine appeared. The restaurant filled and then slowly, as the evening deepened toward 10 o'clock, began to empty again. Their table, with its 2 candles, remained out at some point. Maya mentioned that she had wanted to be a painter when she was younger, before she had decided that wanting to eat regularly was also a goal she had. Sloane asked about the painting. Maya described it large, messy abstract works. Nothing technically accomplished, but full of color in a way that had made her feel like she was externalizing something that had no other form of expression. Do you still paint? Sloane asked. I have about 4 square feet of floor space in my apartment that isn't occupied by furniture, Maya said. So no, that seems like a problem that could be solved. With money, yes. Most problems can be solved with money. Sloane looked at her steadily. Not most, some. What can't be solved with money? Most of the things that actually matter. She said it without drama or false modesty. Just as a thing she had found to be true, Maya looked at her across the 2 candles and the remains of what had been an exceptional meal and thought, this woman is interesting. This woman is genuinely, unusually interesting. And I have been sitting across from her for 3 hours and I feel like I have not yet begun to understand her. She also thought, and she noted this thought with some surprise. The way you note an unexpected sound that Sloane was beautiful. Not in a way that Maya had consciously registered when she first saw her, overwhelmed as she was by the whole situation. But sitting here now in the candlelight, with Sloane's face relaxed from its initial composure into something warmer and more present, Maya thought that she was very beautiful. The structure of her face was striking, strong jaw, high cheekbones. That complicated warm and green gaze, but the beauty was also something else. Something in the way she moved and spoke. A quality of aliveness and attention that made you want to keep looking. Maya was not. In her daily life, someone who looked at women this way. That was not accurate. She was, in her daily life, Someone who very specifically noticed when she looked at women this way, because she had spent a significant portion of her early 20s figuring out what that noticing meant. And the answer had turned out to be both simpler and more complicated than she expected. She was gay. She had known this with certainty since she was 21 and had fallen so completely in love with her friend, Danielle, that she had barely been able to function for 6 months. She was out to her friends and eventually, after a conversation that had taken 2 years to work up to her parents, who had handled it with a combination of love and confusion that had slowly, over time, resolved mostly into love. She did not usually, however, find herself noticing the beauty of complete strangers over birthday dinners. She picked up her wine glass to have something to do with her hands. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said. Sloane's expression did not change. "You can ask. You said your guest couldn't make it tonight." "What kind of guest? Like a colleague?" Or she stopped. "Sorry, that's actually none of my business." "A date," Sloane said, simply. "Oh," Maya set down her wine glass. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." It was mutual. She and I had been a pause, Sloane's first hesitation of the evening. We had been not quite working for a while. She canceled tonight because it was easier than having the conversation. Maya absorbed this piece of information with a care that she hoped was not visible on her face. "That's hard." Maya said it wasn't surprising. Sloane looked at her wine glass. "I work too much. I'm not always present in the way that people need. It's a recurring pattern." She said this with a self-knowledge that was a little painful to hear. The way honest self-assessment can be. "You've been present tonight?" Maya said without thinking about it. Sloane looked up. Maya started to walk it back. "No," Sloane said quietly. "Thank you for that." They looked at each other across the table for a moment that was slightly longer than a normal moment and slightly different in quality from the rest of the evening. And Maya felt something she could only describe as a shift, the same feeling as when a song you've been half listening to suddenly becomes the only thing in the room. The waiter appeared and asked if they would like dessert. They ordered dessert. The dessert was a dark chocolate, something with sea salt and a texture that made Maya close her eyes involuntarily upon the first bite, which was exactly what Jasmine had said would happen. And she had been exactly right. Sloane watched Maya close her eyes and something in her face became briefly unguarded, briefly soft in a way that was gone by the time Maya opened her eyes again. "Good?" Sloane asked. "Transcendent," Maya said. "I want to have a complex emotional relationship with this dessert." Sloane laughed. It was not a small polite laugh but a real one, sudden and warm, and it changed her face entirely, made it younger and less composed and extraordinarily appealing. Maya thought, I would like to make her laugh again. That would be a good thing to be able to do. "Tell me something else about yourself," Sloane said. "Something real. Not a fact." Maya thought about this. "I moved to New York 8 years ago because I was 18 and I had this absolute certainty that I belonged here, that this was my city, even though I had only been here twice as a kid. And then I arrived and New York was brutal and overwhelming and I was broke and lonely for about a year and a half." She paused. "But I never stopped feeling like it was my city. The feeling never went away, even in the worst parts." Sloane was listening with that complete attention of hers. "What about you?" Maya said, "Tell me something real." A longer pause. Sloane turned her wine glass slowly. "I bought my first building at 25, she said. A rundown commercial property in South Boston. I had been working 80-hour weeks for 3 years to save enough for the down payment and I took out every loan I could. Everyone told me it was too much risk. My parents thought I was going to lose everything." She paused. "When it sold 2 years later and I'd made 4 times what I put in, I sat in my car in the parking lot of a grocery store and cried for about 20 minutes. From relief? From something bigger than relief. I'm not sure I have the word for it. The feeling of having believed something about yourself and turned out to be right." Maya felt that land somewhere in her chest. "Yes," she said softly. "I know that feeling. Do you?" "When I got my first real design commission. Not the firm before that. I did a brand identity package for a small coffee shop in Astoria. They paid me $600. I had never had someone pay me money for something I made." She stopped. I felt like a real person. Like I'd proved something about my right to take up space. Sloane looked at her with an expression that was fully open now, all the composure set aside. That's exactly it, she said. The right to take up space. They were quiet for a moment, but it was not an uncomfortable quiet. It was the quiet of two people who have arrived at something true together. It's almost 11, Maya said, looking at her phone with some surprise. Sloane glanced at her own watch. So it is. Neither of them moved to signal for the check. I don't want to leave, Maya said, before she could decide whether to say it. And then, I'm sorry. That came out differently than, no, Sloane said. I don't either. They looked at each other. I haven't talked like this Sloane began, then stopped. Like what? Just talked. Without an agenda. Without it being about work or networking or something that needs to be decided. She seemed slightly surprised at herself for saying this. I had forgotten what it felt like. Maya felt a tenderness move through her, unexpectedly strong. You should do it more often. I should do a lot of things more often. A pause. Would you like another glass of wine? I should probably go. I have work tomorrow. So do I. Pause. Yes, Maya said. I would like another glass of wine. They stayed until midnight. The restaurant was nearly empty by then. The waitstaff had shifted into gentle closing mode, the kind where they refilled water and moved quietly and did not directly ask if you were leaving, but created a general ambient suggestion of it. Sloane signed the check with the easy lack of ceremony of someone who signed restaurant checks regularly, and Maya caught a glimpse of the total and quietly resolved not to look at it again. They stood at the door. Outside, the rain had softened to a fine mist. The kind that hangs in the air and makes the streetlights look like they have halos. This was Maya started. Yes, Sloane said, as if she already knew what the sentence would be. I should get a cab. Or the subway. Maya looked out at the misted street. It's late. Let me call a car for you. Sloane had her phone out before Maya could object. You really don't have to, I know. Give me your address. Maya gave it. Sloane sent it somewhere. 3 minutes, a notification said. They stood on the sidewalk in the fine rain, close together because the awning above the restaurant's entrance was narrow. Maya could smell Sloane's perfume, something clean and slightly woody, restrained but present. She was aware of the small distance between them with an attention that she recognized and did not fully know what to do with. Thank you, Maya said. For tonight. For the table. For the dinner. For she gestured vaguely, which was meant to indicate everything. Sloane looked at her. In the light from the restaurant behind them and the halos on the streetlights and the silver mist, she looked like something from a painting. Thank you, Sloane said. For staying. A car appeared. Maya's car. She took a step toward it and then stopped. I know this was just... She stopped again. She did not know exactly what she was trying to say, which was unusual for her. Give me your phone, Sloane said. Maya handed it over without thinking about it. Sloane typed something and handed it back. That's my number, Sloane said. If you'd like to have dinner again sometime. Not a mistake next time. An intention. Maya looked at the phone. She looked at Sloane. Okay, she said. She got in the car. She looked out the window as it pulled away and Sloane was still standing on the sidewalk, hands in the pockets of her blazer, watching the car go. And Maya thought, I am going to call her. I'm absolutely going to call her. I'm going to call her tomorrow. She called her the next day. Maya did not usually call people the next day. She was, in matters of the heart and proximity to the heart, someone who believed in space. Not because she was uninterested, but because she was, underneath her open warmth, someone who protected herself by moving slowly. She'd been hurt before by Danielle, who had not returned her feelings and had then married a man named Greg and moved to Connecticut, and by Sophie, who had returned her feelings, entirely too enthusiastically, and then also returned the feelings of 3 other women simultaneously, and by a brief and ill-advised entanglement with a woman named Rachel, who had turned out to have extremely strong opinions about how other people should live their lives. Each of these experiences had added a layer of careful deliberateness to Maya's romantic approach, but she called Sloane at noon the next day, sitting on a bench outside her office building eating a sandwich. Because the memory of the previous night felt like something she needed to act on before she could think herself out of it, Sloane picked up on the second ring. I didn't expect you to call today, Sloane said. And she sounded pleased. There was something in her voice that was warmer than her controlled in-person manner, something that the absence of being watched allowed through. I didn't expect to call today either, Maya said honestly. Are you busy? Always. But not for the next pause, presumably checking something 11 minutes. 11 minutes is enough. For what? I want to have dinner with you again. You said an intention. So this is me being intentional. A beat of silence that had a quality of consideration to it. Friday, Sloane said. There's a Japanese place in the West Village I think you would like. 7 o'clock. I'll text you the address. Okay, Maya. Yes? I'm glad you called. Maya smiled at her sandwich. Good, she said. I'm glad I called too. Friday was the Japanese restaurant, which was small and warm and extraordinary, where they ate omakase, and Sloane translated some of the dishes with a matter-of-fact fluency in Japanese that Maya found immensely impressive and said so. I did business in Tokyo for 3 years, Sloane said. You absorb things. What else did you absorb? Patience. The Japanese approach to long-term thinking. A deep appreciation for very good noodles. They talked about Tokyo. They talked about Maya's family, her parents, who still ran the dry cleaning business in Queens. Her younger brother David, who was studying engineering at CUNY and thought Maya's job was vaguely frivolous but loved her anyway. They talked about Sloane's family more carefully, with the particular care of someone navigating a landscape that has difficult terrain. Her mother was in Boston. Her father she did not mention. She had no siblings. She'd been, she said without apparent self-pity, a solitary child who had learned to make do with her own company. Was that lonely? Maya asked. Sometimes. It made me self-sufficient. A pause. Perhaps too self-sufficient, depending on who you ask. Who would I ask? My last 3 significant relationships, Sloane said dryly. Maya looked at her across the small table with its lacquered surface and tiny ceramic cups of warm sock. Were they? She started carefully. Were they all I mean? Were you always gay? Sloane finished, without any edge but with a slight directness that suggested she appreciated not dancing around things. Yes, always you? Since 21, officially, before that in practice. Probably my whole life. Sloane nodded as if this was interesting rather than surprising, which it wasn't. But there was something in the specificity of her attention that made even familiar information feel newly considered. They closed that restaurant too. On the sidewalk outside, in the November chill, Sloane pulled Maya's scarf up slightly from where it had slipped. A small automatic gesture, and her fingers brushed the side of Maya's neck. And the contact was so brief and so incidental that it should not have registered at all. It registered considerably. Same time next week? Sloane asked. Sooner, Maya said. Sloane's expression did that small opening thing again. Wednesday, she said. There's a Korean barbecue place in Koreatown that I think you would. Yes, Maya said. Wednesday. November became a series of evenings. Wednesday Korean barbecue, where they sat across a table with a grill built into it, and Sloane turned out to have a precise and confident approach to cooking meat over an open flame that Maya found disproportionately attractive. Saturday afternoon at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where Maya had been dozens of times but where Sloane took her, through the American wing, and stopped in front of paintings Maya had walked past without stopping, and said things about them that made Maya see them differently. A Tuesday evening at a small wine bar in the West Village. Sitting at the bar itself on tall stools close together because the bar was narrow and the evening was busy. Talking until the bartender gently informed them that it was last call. They texted in between. Not constantly, not in the unbroken stream of consciousness way that Maya's friends texted her, but steadily with purpose. Sloane sent her things, an article about a new public art installation in the Bronx. A photo of a building facade she'd passed that had interesting typography. A question about a design problem one of her marketing people was having. Maya sent her things back a drawing she had done on her lunch break. A view from the window of a subway car that had good light. A question about what Tokyo looked like at 3 a.m. Because she was reading a novel set there. It felt like building something. Slowly, with attention, the way you build something you intend to last. Maya was aware that this was happening. She was aware that she was falling for Sloane Reeves, proprietor of Reeves Property Group, occasional Tokyo resident, precise griller of Korean barbecue, listener of the highest order. She was aware because the awareness was like a light being turned on in a room that had been dim for a while, not sudden, not blinding, but clarifying, making the shapes of things visible. She had not said anything. Sloane had not said anything. They had not touched beyond the casual, accidental contacts of proximity, a hand briefly on an arm to point out something, a shoulder almost touching a shoulder on a narrow sidewalk. It was the most careful, charged, deliberate not touching Maya had ever experienced. She told Jasmine about it one evening in November. Over takeout in Jasmine's apartment. Okay. So let me understand, Jasmine said, holding a dumpling. You went to the restaurant I told you about for your birthday. Your friends abandoned you. They didn't abandon me. I was late. You were late because of work on your birthday, which is its own conversation, but fine. And then you shared a table with a millionaire. I don't actually know that she's a millionaire. Jasmine looked at her flatly. She owns a real estate development company, she eats at Aurelie twice a week, and she called a car for you without asking. She's a millionaire, Maya, maybe. And now you've been on. Jasmine counted on her fingers. 6 dates in 3 weeks, and you haven't kissed her. They're not technically dates. Jasmine put down her dumpling and looked at Maya with the focused, loving exasperation of someone who had been friends with another person for 8 years and had watched that person self-sabotage in specific and recognizable ways. Maya, Jas. They are dates. She is into you. You are clearly extremely into her. What is happening? Maya was quiet for a moment. Outside, the November wind was picking up. Through Jasmine's window, the city glittered in its thousands of lit windows, every one of them a small warm life proceeding forward. I don't want to get it wrong, Maya said. She's different from anyone I've been with before. She's careful. She doesn't rush things. And I don't want to push and have her pull back. A pause. And she's been hurt by people who loved her not being present enough. And I'm terrified of being another person who can't give her what she needs. Jasmine was quiet for a moment, having heard the real thing underneath the words. Has it occurred to you, Jasmine said gently, that the fact that you're worried about giving her what she needs is itself evidence that you're probably someone who would give her what she needs? Maya looked at her friend. Also, Jasmine added, picking up her dumpling again, she sounds like she's in exactly the same frozen, careful place you are. Someone has to move first. Someone moved first. It was a Thursday evening in late November, cold enough for real winter coats. And they were walking through Central Park after dinner at a small Italian place near Columbus Circle. The park was mostly empty, the trees bare against a sky that was a deep navy blue and scattered with the faint version of stars that the city's light allowed. Their breath made small clouds. They'd been walking close together for warmth, in the comfortable way that had developed over the past 3 weeks, close enough that their shoulders bumped occasionally, that their gloved hands swung near each other as they walked. Sloane stopped. They were near the Bethesda fountain, which was dry for winter but still beautiful in the blue dark, its stone figures patient and still. Maya, Sloane said. Maya turned to look at her. Sloane's expression was that careful, composed thing, but there was something underneath it that was working to come through. Maya had learned to read the small signals by now, the slight tension in her jaw, the quality of stillness that came right before something important. I want to tell you something, Sloane said. And I want you to let me finish before you respond, okay? Sloane took a breath. It made a small cloud in the cold air. I have built my life around certain principles, she said, slowly, as if she had been working out how to say this. Control, self-sufficiency, not needing things. I had reasons for this that I won't go into right now, except to say that the reasons felt like protection, and mostly they were. They kept me from being hurt in the specific ways I had been hurt before. She paused. But they also kept me from a lot of things I wanted. And I had accepted that as the cost of the protection. Maya was very still, listening. 3 weeks ago, I was sitting in a restaurant alone, because someone had decided it was easier to not show up than to tell me the truth. And you walked in, completely soaked, holding your portfolio case over your head. and told the host it was your birthday in this voice that was trying to be fine and wasn't quite fine. And she stopped. I thought, let me just offer this person a seat. It's nothing. It's a small thing. The fountain was quiet and still behind her. The city hummed distantly. It was not a small thing, Sloane said. You are not a small thing. And I want to stop treating this. She gestured between them like, I don't know what it is. Maya felt her heart doing something complicated. What is it? Maya asked quietly. Sloane looked at her directly with those warm, complicated eyes. I think you know what it is. I want to hear you say it. A moment. Then, I'm falling in love with you. The words hung in the cold air between them, as real and present as the small clouds there. Breath made, Maya stepped forward and closed the small remaining distance, and kissed her. It was a first kiss that felt like a recognition. The particular sensation of touching someone for the first time and finding that you already somehow knew them. Sloane's mouth was warm and careful and then not careful at all. Her gloved hand coming up to cup Maya's face with a tenderness that made Maya's eyes sting, which she would not have been able to explain to anyone but which made complete sense to her. They stood by the dry winter fountain in the cold and kissed until Maya became aware that she was crying slightly, which was embarrassing and also completely fine. Sorry, she said against Sloane's mouth. Don't be. Sloane pulled back slightly to look at her, thumbs moving gently over Maya's cold cheeks. Her eyes were bright. She was not crying, but she looked close to something adjacent to it. I'm falling in love with you too, Maya said. I have been for a while. I just was careful, Sloane said. Yes, I know the feeling. They stood there together in the winter park, foreheads touching, and the city went on around them. Indifferent and enormous, and somehow, just at that moment, perfectly irrelevant. December arrived with the particular ruthlessness of New York Decembers, which are not picturesque so much as they are determined. The cold was genuine and committed. The wind came through the avenues like it had a grievance. Christmas decorations appeared in store windows and along the streets, and the city took on the slightly manic energy it gets in December, when everyone is shopping and rushing and attending things and being nostalgic and exhausted all at once. Maya and Sloane were, officially and intentionally and with full acknowledgement. Together. This came with revelations. Sloane's apartment was on the 38th floor of a building in Tribeca, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked west over the Hudson River. It was beautiful and immaculate and slightly bewildering to Maya, who had never lived in a space bigger than 900 square feet. The first time she visited, she walked slowly through the rooms, touching things: the surface of the kitchen island, the back of the reading chair by the window, the spine of a book left on the coffee table, not intrusively but with the attention of someone learning a landscape. Sloane watched her do this from the kitchen doorway, a glass of wine in each hand, with an expression that was entirely undefended. What are you thinking? Sloane asked. That you have great taste and almost no personal objects, Maya said. All of this is beautiful, but there are no, she gestured. No things. No clutter. No birthday cards propped up on shelves. No pile of stuff on the counter. I prefer order. I know. But order and personhood aren't the same thing. Sloane handed her a wine glass and looked at the room with the slightly considering expression of someone looking at something familiar through an unfamiliar lens. I hadn't thought of it as a distinction. You have one photograph. Maya had found it earlier, a framed picture on the desk in Sloane's home office. A young woman standing in front of what appeared to be a harbor, squinting into sunlight. Who is she? My mother. 20 years ago. She's beautiful. You look like her. Something moved through Sloane's face. She had a hard life. She worked very hard and she didn't have much help. Is she's well. We're in better contact now than we were for a while. A pause. We were estranged for several years. After my father left, things were complicated. Maya waited, giving the silence the space it seemed to need. He left when I was 12, Sloane said, looking at the photograph. He was not a kind man. His leaving was not a tragedy. But the aftermath was difficult, for her or for you. Both. She worked 3 jobs. I was largely on my own. I learned to manage things myself because there wasn't anyone else to manage them. She said this with a simplicity that made it worse somehow. It built a lot of useful skills. And some less useful ones, Maya said gently. Sloane looked at her. Yes, like not letting people in. Like not letting people in. A pause. I'm working on that. Maya set down her wine glass and walked to Sloane and put her arms around her from behind, her chin on Sloane's shoulder, looking out at the dark river through the window. Sloane's hands came to rest over Maya's arms, and she was quiet for a long moment. And then she leaned back slightly, allowing herself to be held, which Maya had come to understand was actually a significant thing for her. I'm not going anywhere, Maya said. Sloane's hands tightened slightly over her arms. I know, she said, in a voice that was working to be steady. I'm starting to know that. Sloane, in daily life, woke at 5:30 without an alarm. She worked out for 45 minutes with the focused, no-nonsense approach she brought to everything. She drank coffee the really good kind, the kind that required equipment that Maya had never seen outside of a specialty cafe standing at the kitchen window watching the river change color as the sun came up. She was at her desk by 7:15. She worked too much. This was not a stereotype, but a documented fact. Her phone received work calls at 9 p.m. She canceled plans twice in December because of deals that required immediate attention, and both times she called Maya rather than texting. And her voice during these calls carried the tension of someone fighting a lifelong habit. I'm sorry, she said the second time. I know this is exactly the thing I said I was trying to do less of. You're allowed to have a career, Maya said. I'm allowed to cancel plans with you twice in a row because of my career? If the reason is real, yes, once. A pause. Not perpetually. Sloane was quiet on the phone. You're not going to let me get away with the pattern. No, Maya said. I like you too much to let you get away with the pattern. Another pause, and then Sloane made a sound that was something between a laugh and a sigh, and said, I'll be there by 9. We can still have the end of the evening. I'll get wine. She arrived at 9:15, still in work clothes, carrying an apology in the form of flowers, not a bouquet exactly, more like an armful. The kind of uncontrolled abundance that suggested he walked into the nearest flower shop and bought without calculating. Maya's apartment, with its 4 square feet of non-furniture floor space, was briefly overwhelming with flowers. That's too many flowers, Maya said. I know, Sloane said, looking at the armful with something like chagrin. I love them. Maya said. Sloane looked relieved in a way that made Maya realize she'd have been genuinely worried. I really don't bring flowers to people, Sloane said. I want you to know that this is unusual for me. I know, Maya said. That's why I love them. She kissed her, and Sloane's arms, still full of flowers, went around her anyway, and they stood in Maya's small apartment surrounded by too many flowers on a Friday night in December, and Maya thought, this is what I want. This exact configuration. This difficult, private, slowly opening woman with her arms full of flowers she didn't know how to give, and her 38th-floor apartment with its single photograph. I want to learn all of it. I want to be the person who gets to learn all of it. Christmas approached. Maya had plans for parents. Queens, her mother's cooking, her brother David's affectionate mockery of her life choices. The whole comfortable architecture of family that she had, built over 27 years of coming home for the holidays. Sloane had less clearly defined plans. Her mother was in Boston. Their relationship was improving, but not yet easy. She had been invited, but had not committed. Come home with me, Maya said on a Thursday evening in mid-December. Sitting on Sloane's sofa with her feet tucked under her and Sloane's arm around her shoulders, Sloane looked at her. To Queens. For Christmas. Or part of it. Maya was watching her face. My family is, she searched for the right word. Loud and warm. And my mother will try to feed you until you surrender. And my brother will definitely Google you and then pretend you didn't. But they're mine and I want them to meet you. Sloane was quiet for a long moment. Maya could feel her thinking. The particular quality of Sloane's internal consideration. You want to introduce me to your family, Sloane said. Yes, that's significant. Yes, Maya turned to look at her properly. Is that okay? Sloane's expression did its opening thing, the window pushed up to let in air. Something in her eyes that was vulnerable and clear. I'd like that, she said quietly. Very much. They went to Queens on Christmas Eve. Maya's mother, Linda Chen, was a small woman who communicated primarily through the medium of food and who had an immediate and comprehensive read on people that she expressed through how quickly and abundantly she fed them. Sloane, who arrived with wine and a contribution to dinner that was not required but deeply strategic, was identified within approximately 20 minutes as a person deserving of the full arsenal. By the end of the evening, she had been fed 6 different dishes, had her wine glass refilled without asking 4 times, and had been drawn into a conversation with Maya's mother about property values in Queens that lasted 45 minutes and ended with Linda saying, thoughtfully, "You're very smart," in a tone that indicated this was both an observation and a provisional approval. David, who was 23 and had definitely Googled Sloane, asked her exactly 2 questions about her business with the transparent casualness of someone who had done his research, received crisp and comprehensive answers, and thereafter treated her with the slightly odd respect of an engineering student encountering evidence of successful applied mathematics. Maya's father, James Chen, who was a quiet man who liked people to be comfortable in his home and communicated this through the offering of seating and beverages and a warmth that did not require many words, shook Sloane's hand when she arrived and said, "We've heard a lot about you," and Sloane said, "All good things, I hope," and Maya's father smiled and said, "Very good things," and something in Sloane's face when he said it made Maya want to take her hand. She took her hand out in the kitchen later, while her mother was giving Sloane the recipe for something she had declared delicious. Maya stood in the doorway watching the 2 of them at the kitchen counter, Sloane writing in her notebook with the concentration she gave to everything, her mother talking with her hands, and the ordinary domestic warmth of the scene. This small kitchen with its familiar smell of ginger and garlic, and Sloane in it with her notebook, fitting into the edges of Maya's life with a care that looked, from here, a lot like Love. January arrived. Real winter now, brutal and bright, the kind of cold that made the city look clean. They fell into a rhythm. 4 nights a week, sometimes 5. Sloane's apartment on weekends, mostly because it was larger and had better coffee equipment. Maya's apartment during the week sometimes because it was closer to both their offices and because, as Maya had pointed out once and Sloane had not disagreed with, it was more human-sized. Maya had installed a small coffee drawer in Sloane's kitchen for her own preferred beans, which was not a grand gesture but had the quality of one. The quiet marking of territory through domestic detail. Sloane had cleared a shelf in her closet for Maya's things. She had done this without making a speech about it. Had simply said, "I cleared some space," the next time Maya was getting ready for work from her apartment, and had gone back to her emails with the deliberate calm of someone trying not to make a big deal of something that was a big deal. Maya had looked at the empty shelf for a long moment and then gone and kissed Sloane on the temple and said, "Thank you," and Sloane had said, "For a shelf?" And Maya had said, "For the shelf," and they had understood each other. There were hard moments. There were evenings when Sloane came home from work, carrying the compressed tension of a difficult day, and moved through the apartment in a silence that was not about Maya, but that Maya had to remind herself was not about her. There were mornings when she was brusque, efficient, already halfway into her workday before breakfast was finished, and Maya had to consciously not take the briskness personally, and there were times when Maya's life felt small in ways that were unfair to attribute to Sloane, but that proximity made visible the difference between Sloane's world and Maya's, which was not about feeling diminished by Sloane, but about the ordinary insecurity of a person who grew up being careful about money, living in close proximity to someone for whom money was simply not a factor. "Does it bother you?" Sloane asked one evening when Maya had been quieter than usual. "What?" "The difference. The money. The life I have." She said it directly, as she said everything without pretense. "I watch you sometimes when we're in certain places, and you get this expression, like you're calculating something." Maya was quiet for a moment. "I grew up calculating," she said finally. "It's a reflex. It doesn't mean I'm uncomfortable with you. I know. But I want you to be comfortable. And I don't want." Sloane paused, choosing words carefully. "I don't want the difference to make you feel like less than you are. Because you are not less than anything." Maya looked at her. That might be the most straightforwardly romantic thing you've ever said to me. Something shifted in Sloane's expression toward warmth. I have my moments. You really do. What would make it easier? The difference. Maya thought about this honestly. Nothing needs to be made easier exactly. I need to sometimes be allowed to feel it and have that be okay. Not fixed. Just acknowledged. I can do that, Sloane said. I know you can. Maya leaned her head against her shoulder. That's why I told you. February. Valentine's Day, to be specific, which both of them had independently decided was a somewhat manufactured occasion, but which Maya had also privately wanted to be acknowledged in some small way, and which Sloane had planned a reservation for at a restaurant Maya had mentioned once in passing weeks ago, which was either very romantic or evidence of slightly unsettling levels of attention. The dinner was lovely. The reservation was wonderful. The evening was what it should have been. The fight happened at midnight. On the walk home, it started small. The way real fights usually start, not with the real thing, but with the thing adjacent to it. Maya made a comment about a work trip Sloane had mentioned a week in Chicago, the following month for a development project. She'd mentioned it briefly. Very briefly. When did this come up? Maya asked. I told you about it. You mentioned Chicago in passing. You didn't say a week. Sloane was quiet for a moment. I may have not fully communicated the timeline. Why? Because a pause. Because I knew you'd want to discuss it and I didn't have the bandwidth to discuss it when it came up. Maya stopped walking. Sloane stopped too. And turned. So you decided for both of us that we wouldn't discuss it, Maya said. Her voice was level, but something underneath it was not. I didn't decide anything. You made a unilateral decision about information that affects both of us because you didn't have bandwidth. That's deciding, Sloane. Sloane's jaw set slightly. It's a work trip. I'm not asking for permission. I know you're not asking for permission. I'm not asking you to. I'm saying that when we're together, things that affect us get communicated between us. That's how this works. A pause. Or how I thought it worked. You thought we report to each other about work schedules? I thought we talked about things. Maya's voice is getting quieter, which was actually more worrying than if it got louder. I thought that was something we were doing differently. You said you wanted to do this differently. Be present differently. Sloane was quiet. Something in her face was doing the pulling back thing. The walls going up, and Maya felt it happening and felt the accompanying frustration and fear. Don't do that, Maya said. Do what? Go away, I can see you going away. A long pause. The street was empty and cold, somewhere in the West Village, a few inches of snow on the ground and their breath-making clouds. I'm sorry, Sloane said finally. It came out slightly effortful, like something that required muscles she wasn't used to using. I should have told you about the timeline. You're right. Maya exhaled. Thank you. Sloane paused. The reflex is to manage. To handle things myself before they become issues. I know it's not the right reflex for this. I'm working on it. I know you are, Maya said. I see you working on it. I'm not. She stopped, started again. I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. I know how you're built. I love how you're built, actually, most of it. But part of being with someone is letting them be in the mess with you. Even the manageable mess. Sloane looked at her for a long moment in the cold. Come to Chicago, she said. Maya blinked. What? Come to Chicago for the week. I have meetings during the day, but the evenings are free. Come with me. I have work. Can you work remotely for a week? Probably come to Chicago. Sloane stepped forward, closing the small snowy distance between them. Her voice was different now, softer, whatever armor had come up now fully down again. I want to show you Chicago. I want you in the hotel with me in the morning when I'm drinking bad hotel coffee, and I want you there at dinner. And I should have told you about the week. And this is me telling you now. A pause. Don't go. Stay with me. The last 3 words landed differently than the rest. Don't go. Stay with me. Maya looked at her in the cold Valentine's night. This woman who found everything hard to say and was saying it anyway. Who had built walls out of necessity and was choosing deliberately to come out from behind them. Who was asking in the clearest way she knew how for Maya to stay. Okay, Maya said. She went to Chicago. The hotel in Chicago was a beautiful old building in the Loop. The kind of place that had been around since the 30s and had the deep, clean smell of old wood and real linen. Their room was on the 14th floor with a view of the Chicago River, which was green and wide and crossed by a dozen bridges. And the city beyond it was angular and cold and beautiful in the way that Chicago is, which is its own particular way. Different from New York, more horizontal, more lake-oriented. Somehow more blunt, Maya set up her work at the desk by the window and Sloane went to her morning of meetings. And for the first 2 days, Maya worked with a peculiar focus, productivity that sometimes comes from being in an unfamiliar place. The absence of your regular environment, removing certain regular distractions. In the evenings, Sloane showed her the city. She knew Chicago the way she knew Tokyo. From the inside, from spending real time in it rather than visiting it. She knew which deep dish pizza was actually worth the debate around deep dish pizza. She knew a jazz bar in the South Loop where the band on Wednesdays was exceptional. She knew a walk along the lakefront at sunset that made you understand why people loved the city. The lake so vast to the east that it felt like an ocean. The skyline behind you lit up in the dying winter light. They walked along the lakefront on Wednesday evening. The temperature in the low 20s bundled into everything they owned. And Maya took photos of the skyline and Sloane talked about the architecture of Chicago with a knowledge and passion that was different from the contained way she usually talked about her work, more alive. More free, the city visibly meaning something to her. You love it here, Maya said. I came here for a deal 8 years ago and ended up staying 4 months, Sloane said. Something about it I don't know. The scale of it. New York can feel relentless. Chicago feels like it has more room to breathe. Maybe you should have stayed. Sloane looked at her. Then I wouldn't have been in that restaurant in November. Maya smiled into the cold. True, she said. That night. In the hotel room with the river view, they lay in the dark after the city lights had reached that deep winter quiet. And Sloane, who was not by habit a talker in the dark, said, when I was 12 after my father left, I used to make these plans. Very detailed plans. I had this notebook where I wrote out exactly what my life was going to be, what I was going to build, how I was going to make enough money that nothing would feel unstable ever again. A pause. I was 12, Maya listened. I achieved most of the plan, Sloane said. The professional parts. The stability. All of it. Another pause longer. The notebook didn't have a column for this. For what? For being in a hotel room in Chicago with with you. Maya moved closer. Found Sloane's hand in the dark. Plans don't usually account for the good surprises, Maya said. No, Sloane said. She turned her hand over and held Maya's properly, their fingers interlinked. I think I had given up on the good surprises. What changed? A beat of quiet. You walked into a restaurant in the rain holding a portfolio case over your head, Sloane said. Maya laughed softly. That's a very specific catalyst. You were trying so hard to be fine. And you weren't fine, you were soaked and late and disappointed. And you were still. Sloane paused. You were still yourself. All the way through. There was nothing protective about you. No armor. You just were what you were and you said what was true and it was. She stopped. What? Devastating, Sloane said quietly. In the best possible way. Maya lay in the dark and held the word. I've been wearing armor my whole life, Sloane said. I didn't know how heavy it was until I started taking it off. You don't have to take it all off at once, Maya said. I know. But I want to. A pause. I want to with you. Outside, the Chicago River moved quietly beneath the bridges. The city made its city sounds distant traffic, a siren far away. The particular urban hum that is the sound of a million lives proceeding. Maya held Sloane's hand in the dark of the hotel room and felt the weight and the warmth and the extraordinariness of that. Ordinary intimacy. The hand of a person you love in the dark. I love you, she said. She had said it before. The first time on the night of the fountain. And a few times since, but this time it settled differently. With the gravity of something becoming permanent rather than beginning. Sloane was quiet for a moment. I love you, she said. I have for a while. I keep finding new parts of it. New parts of loving me. New parts of what loving you means. New rooms in it. She was quiet again. I didn't know it had this many rooms. Maya thought about that love as a house being discovered. Room by room. I'll show you all of them. She said. March came and the city softened. The quality of the light changed, becoming more golden and more horizontal. The particular angle of early spring light that makes New York look like a film about itself. Trees in the parks began doing their preliminary work, green edges appearing on branches, the most optimistic trees making tentative blossoms. The streets smelled different, less cold stone, more earth. Maya painted. She hadn't told Sloane about this intention. She had simply found one Saturday afternoon in March that the 4 square feet of non-furniture, floor space in her apartment were insufficient, and had mentioned this without quite planning to. And Sloane had listened in her particular listening way and had said, "The following week, I have a storage room on this floor. I never use it. It has good light from the east." And the week after that, Sloane had quietly cleared the storage room of its contents, installed good lighting, and set the key on Maya's coffee cup one morning, without saying anything about it. Maya stood in the empty room and tried to find words for what she felt and couldn't quite. "You didn't have to," she started. "I wanted you to paint," Sloane said simply. "You said you missed it." "This is Sloane. This is your storage room." "It was my storage room. Now it's your studio." She said this as if it were a minor administrative change rather than a gesture that made Maya's throat tight. "I moved the boxes to a unit downstairs." Maya looked at the room. It was not large, but it was real, with its own 4 walls and its east-facing window and the smell of a space waiting to be used. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." Sloane's hands were in her pockets. She was looking at the room rather than at Maya, with the slightly averted gaze of someone who had done something large and was not sure how to receive the reaction to it. "Paint something." Maya painted something. She painted in that room for 3 months. In the early mornings before work and on weekend afternoons when Sloane was in her office doing whatever Sloane did on weekend afternoons, which was mostly fighting with numbers. She painted large abstract works that were nothing technically accomplished but were full of color, the blues and greens of the river at night, the particular amber of the restaurant the first evening, the complicated warm and green of Sloane's eyes, which she spent 2 entire paintings trying to get right, and which she got approximately right on the 3rd try. A painting she did not show Sloane but which Sloane found one morning when she brought Maya coffee and stood in the doorway and looked at it for a long time. "Is that?" Sloane started. "Maybe," Maya said. Sloane looked at the painting. She looked at it for long enough that Maya started to wonder if she should have hidden it. "It's very accurate," Sloane said finally, in a voice that was doing that working to be steady thing. "I had a good subject," Maya said. Sloane crossed the room and took the coffee cup out of Maya's hand and put her arms around her and held on in the silence of the studio. The morning light coming in through the east window. The smell of paint and coffee. "I don't know what I did to deserve you," Sloane said. Against Maya's hair. "You offered me a seat," Maya said. "In the rain." April arrived like a gift. Jasmine met Sloane properly for the first time at a dinner in April, and afterward texted Maya a single message that read, "Okay, I completely understand everything now. She's magnificent and I need you both in my life forever," which Maya read and showed to Sloane, who looked at the phone and then looked away with an expression of helpless pleasure that Maya had come to recognize as one of her favorite things. Sloane's colleagues met Maya at a charity event in mid-April, a thing for a children's hospital that Sloane's company supported. Maya wore a borrowed dress and felt entirely herself in it. And when Sloane's business partner Marcus, who was large and cheerful and thoroughly unsurprised by the presence of Maya in Sloane's life, having apparently witnessed several years of Sloane's self-isolation with increasing exasperation, shook Maya's hand and said, "She's completely different since she met you. I hope you know that." Sloane had given Marcus a look that would have stopped most people cold. But Marcus was the kind of man who was immune to looks. "Different how?" Maya asked. "Present," Marcus said simply. "She's been present." They drove home in the back of a car afterward. Through the lit-up city, Sloane's hand in Maya's. Both of them quiet in the comfortable way. "Present," Maya said. Sloane looked out the window. "Don't say I told you so." I wasn't going to. I can hear you not saying it. Maya laughed out in May. The city was truly beautiful. The kind of beautiful that makes even long-time New Yorkers stop and take photos on their way to work. Because the trees are fully green and the sky is that particular May blue and the light does what it does in spring, going golden earlier and staying longer. Maya had been painting again that morning when Sloane appeared in the studio doorway with 2 cups of coffee and sat on the wooden stool she had started. Keeping there and watched Maya work. Sloane liked watching Maya work. She'd said so once in the understated way she had of saying, "Thanks, I could watch you work for a long time," and Maya had been so moved by the simplicity of it that she had put down her brush and gone to her and kissed her. With an ardor that had surprised them both this morning, with an ardor that had surprised them both this morning. Sloane sat on the stool and watched for a while, and then she said in her careful, considered way, "I want to ask you something." Maya set down her brush. Something in Sloane's voice had a different quality. Something that was not quite nervousness, because Sloane did not do nervousness exactly, but was adjacent to it. "Okay," Maya said. Sloane held her coffee cup with both hands. She was looking at the painting rather than at Maya, and Maya recognized this as the Sloane version of gathering herself. "I bought an apartment," Sloane said. Maya waited. "A few blocks from here. Still Tribeca." But Sloane paused. "It's bigger. There's a room with north-facing light that would be a better studio than this one. And there's a proper second office, so we're not both working from the same room, which I think we've established has a ceiling in terms of productivity." Maya was very still. "I'm not asking you to move in," Sloane said quickly. "I mean, I am asking you that. But I'm aware that's a significant thing to ask. And I don't want you to say yes because of the studio or because of me and then Sloane have it be too fast. It's only been 6 months. I know that's not very long. And you have your apartment and your Sloane." Sloane stopped talking. She finally looked at Maya. "Yes," Maya said. Sloane looked at her. "You didn't even think about it." "I thought about it for approximately 3 seconds, and the answer was yes." Maya set down her coffee cup and came to stand in front of her, and Sloane's hands came up instinctively to hold her hips. "I know that it's fast. I also know that fast and right can be the same thing. I believe in this. I believe in us. I believe in us," Sloane said, as if testing the words, as if it was a phrase she was not yet fluent in but was learning. "Then yes," Maya said. "Yes, I'll move in with you." Something broke open in Sloane's face, the last of whatever careful holding at distance she had been maintaining since November. Since the fountain, since the rain outside the restaurant. She put her forehead down on Maya's shoulder and held on. And Maya put her arms around her and held back. And they stayed like that in the studio with its east-facing light and its paintings of blues and greens and the color of autumn, wine and the complicated warming green of Sloane's eyes. June. They moved on a Sunday in June, which was sunny and warm and which involved more boxes than either of them had anticipated, because Maya turned out to be someone who had acquired, in 8 years in New York, a truly astonishing quantity of objects. A fact that she had not fully confronted until she was surrounded by them. Sloane, who had moved her own things to the new apartment already and was now assisting with Maya's boxes with the calm organizational precision of someone who had learned to move efficiently, paused at a box labeled Stuff Random and looked at it. "There are 4 boxes labeled Stuff Random," she said. "I'm a complex person," Maya said. "You're a person with an unclear organizational system. That is also true." The new apartment was everything Sloane had said. The north-facing room made an extraordinary studio. Maya walked in and stood in the middle of it and felt the light fall on her and said, "Oh," in a small voice, and Sloane, watching from the doorway, looked quietly triumphant. The office was proper and functional and had bookshelves, which Sloane had already been thinking about because she had mentioned that Maya's books needed shelving and had done something about it before Maya moved in, which was such a Sloane thing to do, not asking if Maya wanted shelves, but simply putting shelves in because Maya needed them. The solving the problem approach applied to love. That first night, after the boxes were nominally arranged and the Chinese food containers from their moving day delivery were in the trash, They lay on the bed in the room with its view of the Tribeca rooftops and the beginning of stars. And Maya thought about the rain in November and the wrong reservation and the woman in the charcoal blazer, saying it's a large table. It seems like a waste for both of us to eat alone. What are you thinking about? Sloane asked. The restaurant, Maya said. The first night, what about it? I was so wet. And you were so pristine. You were not that wet. Sloane. I was standing in a puddle. A pause, and then Sloane's laugh, that real warm laugh that changed her face. You were quite wet, she allowed, and you offered me a seat. It seemed like the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do. Maya turned her head to look at her in the dim light. Has anyone ever told you that you did something exactly right? Sloane considered this. Not frequently. You did something exactly right. Sloane was quiet for a moment, and then she said, So did you. When you stayed. Maya thought about all the small choices that had led here, staying for dinner, calling the next day. Not walking away from the fight in the snow, going to Chicago. Staying and staying and staying in all the ways that staying meant. She reached for Sloane's hand. I was never going to leave. She said. I know that now, Sloane said. It took me a while, I know. I'm sorry it took me a while. Don't be. Maya squeezed her hand. It was worth waiting for. November again. The rain came on a Thursday evening in early November. Exactly 1 year from the evening when Maya had walked into a restaurant and stood in a puddle, and said it's my birthday to a host who had looked at her with professional kindness. Exactly 1 year from the woman in the charcoal blazer. And the large table and the 4 hours of talking, and the car called without. Asking they were making dinner at home or Sloane was making dinner. While Maya sat on the kitchen counter providing commentary and occasionally stealing from the cutting board, which was their usual arrangement. Discovered in January and maintained since then with affectionate consistency, Sloane was making the lamb from Aurelie. She had gotten the recipe, actually gotten it from the chef, because Sloane, when she wanted something, identified the most direct path to getting it and took it, and she'd been practicing it since April. And the 3rd iteration had been extraordinary. And the 4th had been perfect. It smells exactly the same, Maya said. From her perch on the counter, that's the intention. Sloane added something to the pan with a precision that Maya found somehow wonderful. How does it look? It looks beautiful. Maya was looking at Sloane rather than the pan. Sloane glanced up and caught her looking and understood immediately what the looking was about, which was one of the accumulated gifts of a year of knowing someone, the communication that required no words. Her expression did the warm, slightly unguarded thing it did now with much more frequency. The face she wore at home. 1 year, Maya said. 1 year. Sloane set down the spoon and came to stand in front of her at the counter. And Maya's legs went around her automatically in the way that had become habit. Happy mistaken birthday dinner. Maya laughed. Happy mistaken birthday dinner. They stayed like that in the kitchen. The rain outside making its sounds against the Tribeca windows. The lamb doing its beautiful, slow, aromatic work in the pan. The apartment around them full of the accumulated evidence of a shared life, Maya's paintings on the walls. Sloane's books on their shelves, the 4 boxes of stuff random that had eventually been organized into meaningful categories. The studio with its north light and its current large canvas in progress. The photograph of Sloane's mother now placed on the bookshelf in the living room rather than a home office desk. Placed there because Maya had moved it quietly one day and Sloane had come home and seen it there and had not moved it back. Tell me something real, Sloane said. The same request from the first evening, the rule they had established in the amber candlelight of Aurelie and kept ever since. Maya thought about it. I think about that night a lot, she said. The rain, walking in. Being I was so embarrassed. My friends had left and I was soaking wet and I was about to ask if I could eat alone on my birthday. And then you were there. She paused. And I've thought probably 100 times over the past year about how close I came to not going in. There was a moment on the sidewalk outside where I almost just turned around and went home. Sloane's arms tightened slightly around her. And I am so. Maya stopped. I don't have the right word for what I am that I didn't turn around. Grateful doesn't cover it. Lucky doesn't cover it. Tell me the word and I'll tell you if I agree, Sloane said. Maya thought about it for a while. Right, she said finally. I feel right. Like something went right that very easily could have gone a different way, and because it went right, everything is different. My whole life is different. I am different. Sloane looked at her for a long moment. Me too, she said. She kissed her. They're in the kitchen with the rain and the lamb and the year of accumulated brightness around them. Your turn, Maya said. Tell me something real. Sloane took a slow breath. She looked at Maya with those warm, complicated eyes that Maya had spent 3 paintings and a year trying to fully understand. I had stopped expecting anything, she said. Not because I was depressed or unhappy, I was functional, productive. I had everything that the 12-year-old with the notebook had planned for. But I had quietly, without quite noticing it, stopped expecting things to be surprising. To be good in ways I hadn't planned. A pause. You were a complete surprise. You are the best thing that has ever surprised me. Maya thought she might cry again. She had cried at the fountain. She had cried in Chicago in the dark. She was becoming someone who cried at good things, which she had not been before. And she blamed this entirely on Sloane Reeves. I love you, Maya said. I love you. Sloane said. The rain fell against the windows of the building in Tribeca. The lamb was approaching perfection. In the north-facing studio, the current painting sat in the waiting dark. A field of deep greens and amber. The colors of a particular evening in a restaurant in November when the rain was thick and a woman in a charcoal blazer looked at a soaking wet stranger and said, "It's a large table. It seems like a waste for both of us to eat alone," which was not what she meant, of course. What she meant was, stay. And Maya had stayed, and everything had followed from that. Maya-chan and Sloane Reeves got engaged on a Tuesday evening in November. 2 years after the rain, in the restaurant where it had started at Aurelie, at a table in the corner near the abstract painting. With 2 candles on the table, Sloane had requested the same table. The restaurant had remembered her. Of course it had. Maya had not been expecting it. She had thought it was a birthday dinner, a real one this time, no wrong reservations, no wet sneakers. Her friends arriving on time and already seated when Maya and Sloane arrived. But Jasmine, who was deeply complicit in the whole thing, had texted Maya that morning saying she couldn't make it. She was so sorry, could they reschedule, and so it was just the 2 of them at the corner table, which Maya had found slightly sad and then quickly unsad because dinner, alone with Sloane in a beautiful restaurant, was not a hardship. Over the lamb, the restaurant's lamb. Not the homemade version, though both were now equally part of their history, Sloane said, in her careful, precise way. 2 years ago tonight. You were 22 minutes late. I was, Maya agreed. And soaking wet, correct. And you told the host it was your birthday in a voice that was trying to be fine and wasn't. Maya looked at her. Sloane's expression was composed in its usual way, except that it was also completely not. The careful surface barely covering something large and lit. And I offered you a seat, Sloane said. Because I thought it would be a small thing, and it wasn't. And it wasn't. Sloane reached across the table and took Maya's hand. Her other hand was doing something under the table. Something Maya couldn't see, and then it appeared above the table. And in it was a small box. Maya stopped breathing for a moment. You have made everything real, Sloane said quietly. The apartment is real. The studio is real. Tuesday evenings are real. Falling asleep and waking up, all of it is real in a way it wasn't before. You made me real. She paused, and something cracked very slightly in her composure, the most beautiful crack Maya had ever seen. I know this is fast. I know 2 years is fast for some people. It's not fast, Maya said, her voice unsteady. It's not fast for us. It's not fast for us, Sloane agreed. Nothing with you has ever felt fast. Everything has felt like it was exactly the right pace. She opened the box. The ring was simple as single stone, warm-colored, set in something that looked old and worn slightly at the edges. Not a showpiece. Something that looked like it was meant to be worn. It was my grandmother's, Sloane said. My mother's mother. She was a fierce, impractical, large-hearted woman who ran a bakery in South Boston and who was the only person in my family who consistently made me feel like the world was not a dangerous place. She looked at the ring. I asked my mother for it in January. Maya was crying. She was aware of this and was past caring. Maya-chan, Sloane said. Will you? Yes, Maya said. I haven't finished. You don't have to finish, yes. Sloane's composure cracked entirely then, and her smile came through. That real unguarded warm smile that Maya had first seen at a table in November over a birthday dessert. And it was still the best smile Maya had ever seen. Yes? Sloane said. Yes, Maya said. Obviously, yes. It was always going to be yes. Sloane put the ring on Maya's finger. It fit. Of course it fit. They sat in the corner of Aurelie, at the table near the abstract painting with 2 candles burning. Between them and the amber light falling over everything and the ring on. Maya's hand catching the candlelight. And outside the restaurant, it was raining again. The same city rain that had sent Maya through the store 2 years ago in wet sneakers with her portfolio case above her head. Trying to be fine, not quite fine, 22 minutes late to her own birthday. Don't go, Sloane had said. In so many different ways over 2 years. Stay with me, Da, and Maya had, and this is where staying led.